Perfection. Okay. That's what we like to hear. Anime Millennium. Echo fixed it. Good. Good, good, good. All right. All right. You guys are amazing. I do appreciate it a great deal. I'm trying to figure out the best setup for this. All right. All good. This is wonderful. All right. So let's see here. So I had the opportunity, as everybody knows, to interview Glenn earlier in the week. And rather than do an ordinary show like I would normally do for the weekend, I thought, wouldn't it be great to get everybody together like this? So that's where we're at. And yeah, sorry for being delayed. Appreciate it. Let's see. The disclaimer is the same disclaimer that I've ever had. You guys don't really need this, but if this is the first time you've ever been exposed to the program, you know the drill. Okay. Big thank you to the channel members. Channel members are amazing people. They are contributing so that the show keeps going, and I do appreciate it a great deal. And you guys are awesome. And, it means a lot. I think about this stuff a lot. Like, folks are contributing on a monthly basis, either for the level 1, which is kind of like, a tip in the tip jar, or level 2, which is, $5.99 a month. And if you're $5.99 a month, to me, that's like a pretty significant enough commitment. So I do want to give those folks, or you folks that are watching, as much value as I can every month. So, try to get at least one sort of members only video out every month or every week. So that's be 4 per month. This last one I did is something that will eventually get into the main body of the program. But until I do that, it's, members only. All AI is physical AI. And, concept, I'll probably talk about it here on this thing, but I think everybody wants to talk about the Glenn show. So let's do that. Okay. The first question was, what phase of the transformation is MicroVision in 6 months into Glenn's tenure? How should we evaluate the pace of execution? And, the response was, pretty much what you would expect. Positive response. We're right where we need to be. The moves are driven by lidar 2.0, which is the portfolio approach, the right team, the right footprint. He referenced Orlando and Hamburg, and then Black Force Engineering in Colorado as the ASIC and silicon design group. So this was really cool. You start to get a little better clue into the footprint and how MVIS is going to be sort of configured going forward. Scantinel integration is complete. The Luminar footprint consolidation is completing presently. And I think the thing that stuck with me was the framing was, here in Q1, they've been doing all this integration work, and that's going to be completed shortly, and they'll be moving into integration or execution mode. So from integration mode Q1, which is pretty good considering the purchase wasn't even made till, end of January, and then it was closed a week afterward. So then they immediately go into this execution mode after, integrating the group. Of course, part of this integration was, a big riff in Redmond and closing the Redmond office and all this stuff. But, what strikes me, so the question was really about the pace of execution and how fast are we going? And it's a little bit of a softball because it's obvious from looking at the data that the speed of execution is tremendous. These guys are just absolutely going blitzkrieg mode. But it's nice to hear from him that the integration's going well, is right where we need to be and all this. Okay, who is Black Force? So Thank you for that. Black Force is the ASIC design group that Luminar bought. So one of the things about our headquarters moving to Orlando, I think so. They haven't said that, but what they said was that was going to be the engineering, I guess, base for US, because Redmond. So I don't know. I mean, Glen, I think, is based in the Detroit area. So, they didn't say that headquarters was going to be Orlando, but they did say they were going to spend a bunch of money to retire the Redmond office. You have to have a headquarters somewhere. But yes, 76 Loopy is correct. Black Force is the one who did the Luminar ASIC. So Luminar, to their credit, were fairly vertically integrated. So they bought their own chip design company, and they brought them in-house, and they work with them, and they're based out in, I guess, Colorado Springs. So that's all pretty interesting. So that's who Black Force is. Is headquarters moving to Orlando? I think so, but I didn't ask specifically. And I think the way that they framed it was, it would be the engineering center. So if it's the engineering center, you might as well have an office there and make it the headquarters. Now, of course, Drew is in Redmond, and I assume, Glen obviously has the corner office there. So, is Drew going to move to Orlando? I'm not sure. Okay. The Luminar customer conversion question. How does re-engagement become actual revenue? So he described 3 tiers. One, the transactional. Orders on books, converting to MicroVision orders, shipping now, or started shipping in February, and now they're shipping in March, and they're continuing to ship. So that was interesting. Development would be the next tier of customers. So these are the customers who step back in bankruptcy of Luminar. And then Glen's personally leading the re-engagement and the relationship reconstitution. He says, that's where I'm spending a lot of my time. So obviously this is the highest upside setup, right? If you think about it, there was Volvo, there was Mercedes, there was Nissan. All 3 of those had contracts with Luminar, and all 3 of those contracts did not convey through the bankruptcy process. So basically, Glen is taking it upon himself to restore the relationships and rebuild so that those customers can become reactivated as MicroVision customers. They've spent a lot of time with Luminar working on, the Nissan thing. I just did a show a couple weeks ago with everything that they've got planned, and it's all based on Luminar. You listen to the GM of their ADAS group. Of course, it's translated from Japanese to English, but he basically says this is the best product available for what we need to do. So if the company that had the best product available goes into bankruptcy, and then within a few weeks, the CEO of that new acquired company or acquiring company comes in and says, hey, listen, we're going to make it right for you guys. I would say that's a good setup for those customers. Glen characterized the customer reception as positive, and that those customers were relieved that automotive and industrial experienced leadership has taken over, which of course is him, as well as, I guess, Greg. And I don't really know what his role is. I guess it's a supply chain thing. But between those 3 guys, you've got your automotive experience leadership. On prospecting, this was interesting because I don't know if the 30 customers includes prospects. That would seem a little counterintuitive. But there you have it. He's got prospects in the mix. And so now the prospects, so the Luminar sales team was acquired with the Luminar acquisition. Now the Luminar sales team that was going out prospecting to sell Halo, ostensibly, can now sell MOVIA S alongside. So you've got your tri-lidar sales pitch, kind of makes itself between the Halo and the MOVIA S. So what it means is you kind of get a 2-for-1. Rather than just saying, hey, we bought a business, now we're going to go sell that company's products. You say, well, we bought a business, we got the sales team. Sales team already has sort of warm leads on these products. And now we're going to basically go sell that plus this other sensor, which is dramatically lower priced. So that's all pretty good. Any thoughts on this one? I thought this was one of the more kind of interesting things, the way he stratified the group of customers. Okay, back to Jessica. Is tri-lidar still a thing? Since Maven seems to be out of the question for automotive, is Iris Halo part of tri-lidar in your opinion? So this is a good question, Josh Kamal. My opinion is yes. My opinion is that a tri-lidar between a MOVIA S and a Halo is probably where it's headed. But I don't have that like written in stone. One of the things that was interesting when Glenn first came on, and they were in that IAA in Munich, and he introduces tri-lidar architecture. Well, spent a lot of time talking about MOVIA S on the corners, and it was really the highlight, MOVIA S on the corners. And towards the end of that, he even commented, hey, if you want to use a different long-range lidar, just use us on the corners, like we're happy with that. So it was kind of interesting, because you would imagine, if you were really bullish on your own long-range lidar solution, that you would be saying, you know, this is it, this is the thing, and use all three, and boom, 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 and here you go. But it's kind of like it's hedging a little bit and saying, you know, we're compatible, we'll integrate, we'll unify with other solutions, and very modular kind of practical, pragmatic approach. So if I was a betting man, I would say tri-lidar architecture is going to be MOVIA S plus Halo for the years to come. I think there's two things about Glenn's moves at the outset, which is basically he bought Scantinel on the first day after becoming CEO, 1550 nanometer FMCW. Immediately goes and buys Luminar, and, you know, outbid the lowest bid by a good bit. So he obviously wanted it. He didn't just win by $1. He won by a few $1 million. Of course, he underbid what may be Austin Russell, who came in with some price that blew away the R33 million. But they decided that they shouldn't accept that because the source of the funds couldn't be verified. So in any event, he bought two companies, both 1550, both long range, and has since kind of de-emphasized Maven, de-emphasized MEMS-based LiDAR, other than to say this is an important technology building block that we can use going forward. So it may be that the MEMS gets integrated with the FMCW platform. You know, I don't know. But I don't think it'll be Maven as we have known it. Q3. So I put it to him like, you know, which vertical gives you the most confidence about your $10 to $15 million revenue guidance? And he didn't really say that. He said it was based on timing. So he kind of described it like, here in the first half of the year, the revenue will be Iris shipments plus MOVIA L for defense and engineering services revenue. So we'll talk a little bit more about engineering services revenue, you know, as we get a little farther into it. But those are your three components of the first half of the year. And then the back half of the year, you got your MOVIA S launch, described early Q4, so that means October. And the pre-orders are being worked now. So that's the sales action that's happening. All three of the end markets are active across all the products, not just one market and one product. So that's pretty cool. They're selling Iris into defense. They're selling Iris into industrial. And they're selling Iris into automotive. And, same with the other products. So pretty cool. The guidance range may be refined. What about the second quarter MOVIA L LCAS launch, says GGP? I think it's punted. It's punted for the MOVIA S. Because everything that MOVIA L can do, MOVIA S can do better and cheaper. MOVIA S is a superior product across all dimensions. It's got smaller form factor, lower power consumption, higher resolution, and lower cost. So the folks that are consuming the MOVIA Ls right now, European security customer selling into a UGV, they must have they're not waiting around for October before they can get their hands on it. They want it right now, and they want to integrate right now, probably because they have an urgent need that may be like a real battlefield situation where these UGVs need to get deployed. So if you've got a real battlefield situation, you can't wait for necessarily smaller and cheaper, right? You got to get after it right now. Okay. Guidance range may be refined upward as contract conversions clarify. So if we go back and listen to what Glenn said, it sounded like, to me, and this is my interpretation of what he said, the range was provided at that point based on what he knew at that point. And that as the contract conversions clarify, there could be an opportunity to revise that range, hopefully upward. So we'll see. Has Glenn said that LCAS has shifted to MOVIA S? I think 76 means, yeah. Or is that my gut? So, he didn't specifically say that. Firstly, what they did was they wrote down all the MOVIA L inventory as though it was obsolete. And so we took like a $10 million accounting line loss for that at that time. So that was like, I obviously made Q4 numbers pretty rough. But what it means is every MOVIA L that they sell from now on has a zero cost of goods. So you have basically 100% margin on the MOVIA L sales. So I don't know how many are in the inventory. They built up a lot of inventory, I guess, something like $10 million worth at least. And I don't know how many are going to this European security customer for their UGVs. I guess they bought $200,000 in Q4, $200,000 worth. So we'll see. But yeah, my interpretation is that the LCAS concept, which is your industrial ADAS thing, will be using MOVIA S instead of MOVIA L. Because why kick off a product launch when 6 months later you're going to obsolete the whole hardware? And why not just instead say, you know what, this thing, go with this. It's going to cost a lot less and be a lot better. What a great move by Glenn buying Luminar, says Josh Kamal. Yeah, it's nice we didn't get outbid by $1. Did Glenn have your questions beforehand? So, why didn't I ask about the financials and compliance issues overhanging the company? Great interview and questions. So, yeah, I shared the topics. Basically, after the Q4 call, what about this? What do you think about this? And so we arranged to do the interview, and I'm glad that you liked the questions. I didn't ask about the financials and the compliance because it's like, it's going to sort itself out. Like there's nothing for it. Like if I say, you guys need to raise some money, obviously they need to raise some money, so there's not like a insight there. I hope you guys can raise money on good terms. Like, I don't know. I don't think that does too much for us. So Roger says, which categories Caterpillar fall in regarding the engagement tier? So Caterpillar is one of the customers whose contract did convey to MicroVision in the bankruptcy process. So what that means is whatever the terms of that contract were, they just floated across, and now it says MicroVision instead of Luminar. So when they talk about services revenue, engineering services revenue, that's a place where I would probably start looking, because Luminar had been designing a custom setup for Caterpillar for 2 irises plus some kind of chip that does point cloud resolution between the two. And so that would seem to be the kind of thing that would be a engineered solution that could require some NRE. Okay. Did you get a feeling from Glenn that defense and industry can be sold this year if they were including the forecast? Or would that be an upward surprise? So industrial, he did comment that industrial has a shorter cycle, and that, I think he said something to the effect of the industrial orders from MOVIA S would be something that could draw the, revenue in 2026. So that was good. There's things you don't say or ask. It says Kings of the Crown. Were you talking about Caterpillar when you told Glenn there seems to be some synergy? And then he coughed. Was that a signal? Well, let's just say the previous week I'd done a whole episode about how Caterpillar was using Luminar, and they were doing the whole thing at the trade show and this and that. So, when I do these, I don't want to put him on the spot. I don't want to ask him questions that could put him in a spot where he's not able to answer. So asking questions about specific customers doesn't seem like the right way to go. You can ask about the sort of genre or segment, heavy industrial equipment. And that maybe is a little bit safer footing to talk about it. But I don't want to say, what about Nissan? So there's that. Do I see Anduril being involved with MicroVision in some way moving forward? Says Ed. So Anduril thing's pretty funny. Like back in April, right? Last year, I think it was, maybe it was February. Palmer Luckey comes to MicroVision board. He had just bought the IVAS and the mixed reality team from Microsoft to join Anduril, and they were going to bid as the incumbent on the what would become Soldier Borne Mission Command program, which of course, IVAS is MicroVision powered. He says, I believe in this company's technology, MicroVision. So what did I think? This is amazing, right? He loves MicroVision. He must love the scanning laser projectors inside of those IVAS units because they're daylight readable, full color, low power consumption, etc. This must be what he's excited about. And then they go and they bid with Meta, and I guess Meta's all about micro LED. So he's just kind of like, you never got back with us to clarify what those comments were. So that's sort of point one. Point two, we have a 3-person defense advisory board. And on the 3-person defense advisory board for MicroVision, one of those people, Dr. Scott Goldstein, was the chief scientist at Anduril for a number of years. And he's currently an advisory board member for Anduril. He's also presently advisory board member for MicroVision. So If I'm MicroVision and I have this 3-person advisory board, I'm trying to ask them, what is the right product configuration for us? What is the right way to solve a problem in the market with our technology that people would pay for and that we can go and win in the market? And the net result of that is your MOVIA Air, right? Your drone aerial solutions system. So they didn't come up with it in a vacuum. They came up with it in partnership with the 3-person team, one of whom was a Anduril, chief scientist, and currently is an Anduril, advisory board member. So between the advisory board telling them what to do, which is 33% Anduril related or influenced, and Palmer coming on board a year ago and saying, I love MicroVision, you got 2 signals that suggest, and of course, Anduril themselves being heavy into drones and automation and all that kind of stuff. I would say, you can read those tea leaves how you would, but there's a non-0% chance. This is the one way I guess I would put it. I live in Las Vegas. Yes. Okay. Amazing. So anything you can share about the automation of the heavy industrial equipment from Caterpillar and how they were positioning it and stuff like that, that would be great. And I'm sure very useful for everybody here. So please do feel free to share. Okay. Moving on. Industrial autonomy. Where does MOVIA S find its first large-scale adoption? Evaluation samples of MOVIA S are now in customer hands across all 3 end markets. That's great. Industrial adoption cycle is the fastest they could evaluate and deploy yet this year. 2 market access models. So I had asked basically, do you need go-to-market partnerships to make this work? And Glenn basically said you have 2 models. One is direct to OEM, and the other is channel partners and white label distributors. So this is pretty interesting. White labeling would mean that somebody else would put their name and brand on it. And of course, we don't care because it's just a subcomponent of an overall system. And, it doesn't matter whose brand name is on the sensor. It's going to be sold by us and show up on our books as product sales. So he also mentioned they're not building out a large direct sales org. Channel partners handle broad market coverage. So those would be the people that might want to put their own name on it. Here's Xman05. I've invested and lost a lot with bad CEOs that are all about hype. Glenn seems like a steady hand in articulating a realistic timeline. I have been accumulating shares. Well, you know who else has been accumulating shares is your steady hand CEO there. And talk about timing. 52 cents. And now it's at what, 67? So that's 30% in a week. That's not so bad. Now, of course, they can't trade it. They just got to sit with it until whatever the end of this story turns out to be. So I will say I also agree with X-Man that this is a different league of executive leadership for the company. And I'm a lot happier being in this league or having the ship being run this way. So that is good. Key unlock. MOVIA S brings forklift ADAS costs from 10,000 plus to an economically viable range. So he cited 1 million US forklifts, 11% annual accident rate. Just shocking. So 11% on 1 million is 110,000 accidents annually with forklifts. So GGP's all in. This is great. If there's really 110,000 forklifts, and I think he quoted elsewhere that each of those costs, I think it was $30,000 per accident or something like that. And we can go back and figure out the whole math. But the business case seems very, very strong. If your MOVIA S equipped forklift can prevent even a fraction of the 100,000 plus accidents happening every year with these forklifts, well, you've got millions and millions of dollars in savings. And, of course, there's even safety, because an accident with a forklift is something that could hurt somebody pretty badly. So, it's good that we have the solution to that. So, forklift safety, I don't know if I had that on my bingo card for, years ago, but we'll take it. So if this is economically superior to all other industrial safety technologies that would achieve the same thing, preventing accidents and helping things move around in small areas effectively, chances are good that this thing could actually kind of go. Glenn feels like part of a prophecy for MicroVision, the chosen one. I'm very happy with him. That says Kings of the Crown. Okay, Halo Pipeline. If there was ever a part of the interview that was maybe like, I guess a little bit, challenging, is this one. So the Halo Pipeline. B samples, he said later in 2026. I don't know how to interpret that exactly. It might mean late 2026. A little bit of interesting messaging evolution there. On the Q4 call, which I guess was the first week in March, he described it like we're practically at B sample right now. And this is, I'm going off memory here, so correct me if I'm wrong. And then a few weeks later, it evolved on our interview to later in the year. So what that tells me is maybe they looked at where they were at and they said, I don't want to give this to customers just yet. Or it could be a bill of materials thing, like, oh, this provider doesn't give us the right pricing, so we got to swap them out. I'm not sure. But Halo B samples would be later this year, and then that's when the customers can meaningfully evaluate. So that means in the meantime, they got to sell the Iris inventory that they acquired when they bought Luminar. So some warehouse, and I guess it's Orlando, where these things are being built, and they've got to go sell through all the ones they built. Are they making more? That would be a good question that I should have thought to ask. Darn it. Oh well. Okay. B samples for Halo. Adoption of Halo in industrial can happen fairly quickly. Production readiness for next year. Automotive requires a B or C sample, then 2.5 to 3 year development validation cycle. PPAP, PPAP, mid 2029. Model year 2030. So still ways out. Yeah, the data center thing I didn't mention. I didn't mention it because I just wanted to focus on really the task at hand. It didn't seem like, since he didn't mention it again on the earnings call, I don't think that that's really, what the main focus is. I think it was just something he noted at that interview at CES. So I wanted to focus all the questions on the main thrust of the business. So that means no side quests on data centers. And even if they said, yeah, we have an amazing thing for data centers, but won't be ready till 2028. Like, I don't know if that's going to really move the needle. So I put all the questions just right down the center of the plate as far as what we're focused on right now and what's actionable and what's near term. Okay. He acknowledged OEM level 3 pullback directly. OEMs are reformulating strategies, some not including level 3 in next-gen programs. And so what it means is industrial and defense revenue streams are that much more important as the auto timeline extends. So that was all pretty interesting. Oh, it's getting warm. Check it out. Laser Roasted t-shirt. You can get these at laserroasted.com. If you guys had any idea how difficult it is to compete and win against the entrenched big coffee, it's a big thing to take on, but we do what we can with our mail order, roasted to order coffee. Okay. Scantinel for drone detection. So, thank you very much, Jess Russ. I appreciate that. So this was one that was mentioned on the call, and I wanted to double click on it, for lack of a better term. Capability and wear and conversion. So he confirmed that we have 1 kilometer range for the FMCW platform. Is it harder to sell laser roasted coffee or MicroVision lidar? That I don't know. It's an uphill battle, though. I'll tell you, Jim. It's as much as everybody loves the commercials and stuff. Like, I haven't found the key unlock to getting people to convert as often as I would like. So just candidly, if there is, I could lower the prices, but then the margin is like nil. And it's like, well, why am I doing this? Like, so that's more sales at Summon on about combined. I can't really lower the prices too much and make it, sustainable, right? On $50 a coffee, you need to make, a couple bucks. So anyway, we'll sort that out. Maybe I'll have a separate live stream about the coffee business. But yeah, I do appreciate everybody who does buy on Laser Roasted, and at least go check it out. Check out the merchandise that's on there. If there's something you'd like to see, there's like a Ben's MVIS podcast t-shirt. You can get a bunch of stuff that's not coffee or jerky. Just check it out. Let me know. Like, you know what? I would buy this if it came in a different color or whatever. Okay, Scantinel. Weather resistant, eye safe, not visible to night vision. Those are the 3 key defense attributes that were referenced. Effective for identification and tracking of drones and other actors in the area of interest. Primarily European inbound interest for the drone wall. Ukraine, Middle East defense demand. So I don't know too much about European drone wall. That'll be a area of focus for research for me, but that was what was referenced there. A sample's on track for early 2027. They're happy with the milestones being met technology-wise. Development partner discussions are starting now and expects formalization through 2026. And he says, I wouldn't have anticipated the need accelerating as dramatically as it has, which is another way of saying demand is beyond original expectations, at least in this drone detection use case. We didn't buy the semiconductor part of the business of Luminar, says 76 Loopy. And that is true. However, we did buy the semiconductor design group known as Black Force, which we talked about out in Colorado. All right, Scantinel. So that all seems pretty good. Then I had my follow-up. And my follow-up was, it occurred to me after the Iranian drone strikes on the Amazon Web Services data center that all AI is physical AI. And for folks at the level 2 membership, I went into good detail about this thesis. And to put it in a nutshell, it just means that even though it feels like your Claude and your ChatGPT and all these services just exist in this totally sort of frictionless floating state, they actually all depend themselves on physical hardware, physical networking, physical memory chips, all the rest of it. And so, in a way of saying all AI is physical AI means to say there's a physical substrate upon which even the AI chatbot world of today resides. And that physical substrate is vulnerable to destruction from the air, right? You can make a fence around the perimeter of these data centers, but that's not going to stop you if somebody wants to do a drone attack. So there needs to be a reevaluation of the kind of security posture of these facilities in order to make this work. Drones are a central element of modern conflict at every level. Iranian conflict shows the impact on global economic infrastructure. There's a need for effective and cost-effective countermeasures. You can't take out a drone that costs $5,000 with a multi-million-dollar countermeasure. MicroVision security and defense technologies can play a really important role. And Glenn, I don't want to say too much, but he validated the thesis, which I think is incontrovertible, that we need to secure these facilities from bad actors. Okay, MOVIA L repeat EU defense orders. So the question was something like, let's see, I've got it here. The repeat MOVIA L orders from a European security customer are the clearest signal yet of traction in the defense industry. As the drone demonstrator comes online this year, what would a meaningful defense milestone look like for MicroVision in 2026? And here was the answer. MOVIA L is going into unmanned ground vehicle application. So we didn't have that clarity necessarily before, and now we do. So that's kind of nice. He mentioned logistics, medevac, and resupply, and expansion of use cases for UGVs driving demand. And as I mentioned earlier, if they're buying MOVIA L instead of waiting for October for MOVIA S, that must mean there's a time-sensitive component to what they're doing, and they need to get them, right now. He commented that MOVIA S also fits UGVs, and that Iris of 1550 nanometers is attractive for night operations. So there you go. UGVs can use Iris also. The drone focus was real-time terrain mapping, extended perception system for ground vehicles, ISR missions, facility security. Yeah, so physical AI. Jensen Huang mentioned physical AI total addressable market is 50 trillion. So yes, that's entirely true. And, maybe we'll talk about it a little bit at the end of this talk track about the interview. But, I have a theory, and I did share it on the level 2 sort of drive time, but we'll get into it. The drone focus, real-time terrain mapping, extended perception system for ground vehicles, ISR missions, and facility security. AUVSI webinar next week. Set your calendars. It's going to be March 25th at 11. I have a meeting at that time. So I'm not going to be able to watch that as it happens. If any of you guys anybody can register. You just have to fill out the registration form. But I would be most appreciative if anybody could go and listen to that. It's 11. I assume it'll be an hour long. 11 to 12 Eastern on the 25th, which is a Wednesday. I would love nothing more than to be there and watch it, but, sadly, I'll be interrupted at that time. So anyway, if somebody does go and watches that and, puts it on the Reddit board or whatever, that would be wonderful. Outreach to defense contractors is now underway. So he made it sound like he wasn't just going to do this webinar next week. There was going to be some kind of public unveiling or sharing about what they've done that goes beyond the videos that we've seen. So this is great. There's going to be some kind of grist for the mill here coming next week. And the link for it, yes, on the microvision.blogspot.com, which I'll go ahead and give you a link. The first story is the AUVSI thing. So you can go ahead and register through there. Okay, so they're going to launch this story publicly with the drones and sharing the navigability of the terrain and sort of pairing it with the ground vehicles. And this is all great. And then the next milestone was explicitly stated they would be looking for a announced development or supply agreement with one or more drone manufacturers. So somebody was asking about Anduril. Anduril makes drones. But there's more than just them. There's Just Kamal knows what's up. Yes, I will agree with that. However, there's more than just Anduril. There's AeroVironment. There's many drone manufacturers, right? And I would very much like for MicroVision to not just have European defense industry demand and customers, but also American. There is absolutely no reason why Pete Hegseth's drone dominance sort of paradigm can't be an insane demand driver for what we're trying to do. So let's see if we can do that. MOVIA Air system includes the lidar sensor and the RGB camera, the on-sensor map creation, and transmission to ground vehicles or other drones. It's awesome. It's an awesome idea, and I can't wait to see what kind of traction we can get. Demonstrated navigability analytics, where the UGV can drive, or even where a regular human-operated vehicle can drive. The threat assessment and the terrain passability. So if you're driving and you're in a tank or something like that, and there's quicksand that's ahead, this system can tell you got to turn left straight away, which is pretty insane. But this one was the, I guess, clearest milestone. What should we expect this year? So if MicroVision is successful with MOVIA Air, we should expect a development or supply agreement, which would be even better than a development agreement, with one of these drone companies. Agreed. Okay. Synergy between MOVIA Air and heavy equipment automation. So, yeah, you got me. I was pretty much talking about the heavy equipment automation use case, for which we do have one contracted customer, and MOVIA Air. Because why is this just for security and defense when this seems to be quite applicable in areas where the terrain itself is being dug up, either in a quarry or in a mine or whatever. So you might as well have the drone circle the entirety of the area that you're working. Okay, man, something crazy, says Kings of Crown. I don't know if you remember on February 11th, I commented on a drive time because I missed the announcement on March 25th. Then I realized I saw that in my dream on my phone. Okay. All right. I don't remember, but that's probably because it was in your dream. Yeah, this stuff has a way of getting into our subconscious mind. While we may not be in the MVIS header for Anduril, a headset, I think you mean, it seems the drone mapping and feeding of info of soldiers will be critical. I mean, I agree with that, SDG. Anduril's, I guess, primary value add in the space is this lattice software. And the premise of the lattice software is that it integrates sensors and sensor data to help mission effectiveness and deliver information to the various sort of nodes on that network, which would include the soldiers and the vehicles and the weapons and all this stuff. The lidar stuff is more valuable. I don't know why this AR stuff is still so heavily pushed when the movers clearly are selecting everyone but MicroVision for anything AR. So, Jas Kamal, I will tell you that is a painful thing for me personally, because if you don't know, I think I mentioned it at the top of every show. So I was the eyewear product manager back in 2006 to 2011. And I wanted nothing more than to do a MicroVision based headset for soldier safety and situational awareness. And of all the contracts and deals that we did, that was really number one, where the demand was, where I was trying to focus the business and all this stuff. And so to get it to the point where you're in there, you're in the headset, and you've got it with Microsoft, is one of the biggest companies in the world. And it's all part of this program, and it's all happening. And then it gets bought by Anduril and all the stuff we talked through. And then for us having to be like, psych, we're going to use these micro LEDs. Well, I don't know. The micro LEDs are not necessarily ready yet. There was a contract for $14 million that was provided to Copen out of Massachusetts to try to help get those micro LEDs to be production ready. But they're not production ready. When Jeff Porter went to the AUSA conference to go see the Eagle Eye, well, guess what? The Eagle Eye had no display in it. It was a shell. So as much as micro LED makes sense as a sort of improved higher brightness display technology, it's difficult to productize. So I realize I'm rambling. We're not going on to the main topic here, but Jas Kamal, I would say that MicroVision has been in business since 1993. It hasn't been until 2020 that, anything other than augmented reality was really where it was at. I guess it was a little bit early when they sort of de-emphasized AR and were going for the phone projectors. My memory of Palmer discussing display was that they had 4 variants, only 2 of which have been revealed. Yeah. I would just say the whole thing is mysterious. I would say from a industry standpoint, obviously Meta has invested very heavily in micro LED. They bought a company, or they bought all the supply of that company. And, that's where they want it to go. So, that whole wave is going to have to play itself out. They're going to have to get to the point where the physics become the barrier. And they say, we can't make it bright enough, or we can't get the yield consistent enough, because you got to remember, these micro LEDs, you've got millions of individual pixels got to be fixed in place on a little substrate. And if any one of them is misaligned or whatever, your whole panel is basically trashed. So, that's what they mean about yield. I hope at this point we sell the AR vertical entirely. It can certainly fund the lidar business for years to come without dilution. Yes, I guess that would be good. I don't know. I mean, everything that we talk about. So actually, I love this conversation because everything we talked about, lidar 2.0, security and defense lidar, industrial lidar, automotive lidar, none of them are about augmented reality. And if you are a real sort of futurist, if you were to extrapolate Okay, there's Meta with the Meta Ray-Ban glasses. They've bought 5% of Essilor, which is the world's largest eyewear company. They own the frames, they own the lenses, they own prescriptions, they own Lens Crafters here in the US, which is the biggest prescription lens, point of sale place in the world. They've got a direct line to consumer augmented reality with this partnership and with the work that they've been doing. So, wouldn't it be great if they would use MicroVision laser beam scanning? Now, if MicroVision sells laser beam scanning to somebody else, and then somebody else goes and does it, but it funds our lidar without further dilution, is that good? I don't know. I don't know. So this is a very interesting conversation, and something that, what I would prefer is they license it. You can license something without selling it. If you license it, you keep the rights to it, and you provide the access to it for a fee. And they've done this before. They licensed the rights to the laser projector to Sharp, who sells laser diodes. And they sold it to them for $10 million for, I think it was a 5-year period where they could be the exclusive seller of those laser projectors. I don't think Sharp sold anything, but we still got the $10 million. So that was pretty good. Okay, back to this topic. Licensing, not selling. I'm with you on that one, Roger. Synergy between MOVIA Air and heavy equipment. So there's a topic of heavy equipment. When you go off-road, navigability is the issue. Extends perception system for any ground vehicle in any off-road context. So that's pretty good. Competitive moat. So this one was really interesting. With the competitive moat conversation, he basically referenced the portfolio and the breadth of modalities from 1550 time of flight, 1550 FMCW, and of course, 905 VCSEL, SPAD, array, or what they call sequential flash. And it was all assembled at a fraction of development cost. So they bought Ibeo for something like $15 million and change. They bought Luminar for $33 million. They bought Scantinel for what looked like $400,000. So, I don't know exactly, but you put it together, it's less than $50 million. And now you've got these 3 modalities that you can go and sell. And you sell them, and the idea, I think, is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So they acquired all 3 out of distress at a very low cost relative to original investment. No competitor could replicate that without that investment. So that's pretty good. And then the second thing he referenced was the open software framework. Customers can access the histograms, the point clouds, or the full perception and features. We don't see any of our competition doing that. Reduces the integration cost, increases stickiness, protects margin against hardware commoditization. And Glenn drew on his Aptiv background. I know the value of being able to work with a sensor and see inside it. So essentially, they're saying they're the most flexible and sort of customer-friendly company as far as providing access to the sensor's capabilities at a very low level. So that's where he sees the moat around the business. Does the Sentinel perception go across all modalities, including the former Ibeo products? This was a software question, basically talking about the integration of the software capability and how the different hardware platforms can use it. So what he referenced was that Mosaic, which is the annotation and ground truth toolkit, and Luminar's Sentinel software have very similar architectures. That allows them to integrate both of those software packages into one unified development environment, which is the best of both. And with that, you can provide one toolkit and one perception environment across all the products. He says the integration is not really that difficult because the architectures are similar. Customers should be able to combine Iris, Halo, and MOVIA S under one environment. And so that would be the key enabler for your tri-lidar architecture featuring Halo and the MOVIA S. Okay, question 11 was capital discipline. What milestones give confidence the strategy is working? Is a direct critique of the industry pattern by Glen. Companies let the burn rate expand well ahead of automotive revenue, and automotive revenue is never guaranteed. And so the commitment that was implied by that is that the burn rate must not get ahead of the revenue curve, I guess, too much. Post-acquisition pattern is that the costs are going to peak here during integration, which would be this Q1, and then return to a pre-acquisition burn rate. So I guess that means that we're going to get back to a maybe 50 to 60 million burn from a 65 to 70. But, I defer to anybody who's really running the numbers, on the finances. Footprint consolidation into Orlando is primary lever, so we'll reduce all of our locations, or I guess Redmond, and of course the Redmond team is getting reduced, and so that's going to be a big cost savings. As sad as that is for everybody who's affected. So how do we measure it? Customer acquisition and bookings, in quarterly earnings, the burn rate tracking back to the stated levels, and they're going to commit and deliver to whatever that number is. I wonder who the Scantinel financial partner is, asked Roger. So yeah, there was some reference back when they did the Q3 2025 call, and it was after the Scantinel acquisition had been announced. Thus, we were going to learn more about the productization of Scantinel, and I guess whomever we were engaged with. If you go back to the original press release, it described it says MicroVision collaborates with the European photonic ecosystem to do this acquisition. And there was a bunch of folks that were involved in that. All right, I just got an error message on my little thing here, so I don't know if there's any problem there. Let's see. Looks like everything's still okay. I don't know. All right, we're going to keep going. Physical AI. I'm still good, says Rocket. Awesome. Where does MicroVision fit in the stack? And does it scale beyond hardware unit sales? So kind of the thrust of this question is the software the MicroVision is working on, monetizable separately from having delivered the hardware unit, right? You could conceivably, and I didn't really try to pin him down too much on this because it's probably evolving, but conceivably, you could have like a monthly fee for every deployed sensor that uses a certain bit of software. So you have a software license that goes in perpetuity that's connected, of course, to the sensor that you sell one time. Because if you don't do that, then you sell the sensor one time and that's it. And you have to wait for that same customer to go and buy it again. Meanwhile, everybody else in the space is trying to get at that same sort of spot. So if you have software that goes with the hardware, you can preserve your margins because you could bill for it on a recurring basis, or you could otherwise license it separately. Thank you, Just Kamal. I appreciate all your comments on the this live stream and all the other episodes. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. So physical AI. This was really interesting. So he commented that physical AI was just an AI for embedded systems. It was not entirely new, but that end-to-end AI systems are the real shift. So this is one that I would encourage the company to kind of share a little bit more about, because it's not totally clear exactly what that means and how they want to do it. MicroVision sits right at that interface between the analog world, the physical world, and the digital world of the AI models. So what a great quote. So think about it like this. You've got the real world, the analog world. It's got trees, it's got roads, it's got skies. It's the world that we live in. And then there's the digital world, which is where all the computer processing happens. And right at that interface is where MicroVision sits. And this is the thrust of my entire all AI is physical AI argument. Okay, that argument basically has two aspects to it. One is you have to secure the data centers and all the facilities from being bombed by drone strikes, right? Because otherwise it takes everything offline. There is a physical element to every AI service, right? And then the second one is what we think of more traditionally as physical AI, where we have to give perception capabilities to robots, drones, cars, anything that moves is an embodied AI. So Glenn refers to it as an embedded systems. And I think the Jensen Huang perspective is these are embodied AI systems. So it's not just sitting in a cloud as a chatbot waiting for you to put in a request. It's there, it's in physical space. So you have that interesting dynamic. Glenn thinks of it as embedded systems. Jensen Huang thinks of it as embodied systems. How cool is that? But at the same time, it's that same spot, which is the interface between real reality that we all live in and the digital world of processing, of digital decision making, and all that stuff. So, I mean, how perfect is that? Okay. Functional safety and deterministic behavior are requirements in automotive, differentiator versus consumer AI. Right. You can't have your braking system hallucinating the same way that ChatGPT or Claude does. I love how the way these ChatGPTs are, they're so certain they're right. And they'll argue that they're right to the end of time. Like I'll chat with it about all this stuff. And it'll say something like, MicroVision didn't buy Luminar. Right? It'll go to the mat telling you this stuff. And you say, well, here's a press release that says clearly that they bought this. He said, oh, you're right. I said, well, why would you tell me that they didn't do it? He says, well, my training data cuts off as of August 2025. So they basically know nothing. They literally know nothing, but they'll go to the mat telling you how wrong you are about everything that you state as factual. But you can't afford that in a physical world state. You can't afford hallucination because the training data was limited on your braking or your acceleration or your steering. And so that's why they call it deterministic, right? Deterministic means given a given input, you're going to get the desired output every single time. And that's tested and validated and proven. And so that's the difference between a hallucinating AI model and the deterministic AI model. Trained by the best know-it-alls of the internet. Yeah, I try not to get too political on the show for the reason that I don't want to alienate anybody. But it is a matter of fact that the biases of the folks who create these chatbots and the training systems infect the systems and what you get. And so, you have to learn to live with that and try to maneuver around it so you don't get a politically biased response that taints, your output. Okay. So they're going to protect their margins by having software associated with the sensors that they're going to, I guess, license separately. And I don't know if they're going to license it on a recurring basis or what. But the margins for the hardware will shrink. You remember he said lidar sensors should get to sub $100, right? But we want to have as much margin as we can. So you have a very robust software that maybe you could update over the air to, go with the sensor to create the value-added solution. Okay, and the closing is kind of what you might expect. All moves are designed for near-term and long-term success of MicroVision. Okay. Industrial and security and defense are bridges while automotive develops. Okay. We have the portfolio, we have the team, we have the opportunity. It's up to us to execute. I mean, if you wouldn't run through a wall for this guy, he just states it so plain. And the message is basically no excuses, right? They have everything they need. You have a management team. They've got the right engineers. They've got the right products. They've got this portfolio of lidar sensors and software applications. And now they just need to go and sell and do it. So, it's accountability. It's an accountability type framework, right? He's not saying, like, I hope we can go do it. He's saying, we have everything we need. We're just going to go basically attack this market. So there's some thoughts on that one. Okay. So I thought I would cherry pick a few aspects of this that were, noteworthy to me. Okay. First was engineering services revenue. So engineering services revenue is likely associated with one of the acquired Luminar contracts, because we didn't have any engineering services revenue for the previous legacy MicroVision contracts or, results for some time. So this means that customers are paying for customization and integration work before the product scales. This is a healthy signal. So this is good. They're working with customers essentially looking at pre-orders of MOVIA S. Pre-orders forming right now before the Q4 launch. That means it's not speculative. They're not saying if we build it, they will come, which is what happened with MOVIA L. So demand validation is in process. And that comment was kind of buried in the guidance answer. IP that we have that we can protect. Glen made a quiet IP claim about AI in the sensor capability, enabling lower cost hardware at equivalent performance. Went by fast, deserves its own conversation. The burn rate answer was an implicit Luminar autopsy. Glen described exactly how lidar companies fail. They burn ahead of automotive revenue, OEM contracts that can't guarantee volume. Without naming Luminar, he watched them do it wrong from the outside and is explicitly doing it differently. That makes sense. Key insight number 2. We gave a range based on where we were. Past tense framing. Guidance was set with an incomplete conversion data. As we get more clarity, we can refine. Framing a floor, not a ceiling. Set up for upward revision? ? So, that's something worth considering, and I don't know if you guys have thought about that. Glen used the word exciting about the tier 2 traction. So that's the customers who had stepped away in the Luminar bankruptcy process and that he's been trying to reactivate. He's precise and measured, choosing the word exciting for the customers most likely to have walked is some form of signal. So that suggests that things are going okay on that score. As I mentioned, the closing had no hedge. We have the portfolio, the team, the opportunity. There's no qualifying. It's not saying if everything goes well or if the trends are in our favor. He's saying, it's up to us and we're going to go do it. So you love that when people just own it. That's where I'm spending a lot of my time. CEO of MicroVision is personally managing tier 2 re-engagement. This is not a standard thing. Usually they Usually folks would, delegate that to the head of sales or whatever. But this is important enough to the company that he's just going and doing it himself. So the relationships are high stakes. Let's just say on an upside basis, if they were to say, you know what, Volvo, we're going to find a way to make it work and let's go. Obviously that would be a significantly great event for us, assuming that you could sell them the lidar sensors for a positive margin. The inherited customer list is receiving the full portfolio introduction to 30 already qualified customers. MicroVision value per customer expanded beyond the Luminar replacement. So the cross sales of MOVIA to the Luminar customers and Luminar to the MicroVision MOVIA customers is a nice benefit, and the portfolio strategy kind of in action there. I gotta go. Thanks for all you do. Thank you, Angie Epic. Appreciate it. Appreciate it very much. And this will be recorded for posterity, so you can always come back and see it. We're coming in towards the close here. I wouldn't have anticipated the need accelerating as dramatically as it has. CEO is saying his own Scantinel defense projections were too conservative. Demand is pulling the technology, so that's really good. Customers are glad that somebody understands automotive and industrial has taken over Luminar. So Glen's active credibility is actively supporting closing these deals. The acquisition value may be as much about him as the customer list. So take it for what it's worth, but I think it's instructive. So his framing is, of course, not like, thanks to me, we're solving it. But when you add a chief executive with his background and skill set and pedigree, I'm sure it's comforting for these folks who, they work with Luminar. Who's the boss of Luminar? Austin. And, that's a challenging setup. So this is a new boss who's orders of magnitude more credible and accomplished than the previous, wonder kid. So that's pretty good from a customer perspective. Okay, key insight 4. Some customers want the histogram, not the point cloud, but the actual data off the silicon. These customers that he's referencing are building proprietary algorithms on the MicroVision hardware. That makes the switching cost extremely high. So this open software framework becomes a lock-in mechanism for the highest value buyers. So if they're building stuff right off of the histograms that, are the returns from the light waves going out, those customers are going to be locked in. They're not going to be able to switch and go, swap in for your SI lidar because they don't allow you to access a histogram. This is a black box. AI enables you to maintain and expand margins. Cost of goods goes down, but your ASP holds or rises as your software value increases. This structurally improves the gross margin profile. Software has, very low cost to sell. You can sell 1 million copies of Microsoft Word, and it doesn't cost you 1 million times more. But the actual physical computer, it does. So the people who analyze MicroVision may not be necessarily accounting for MicroVision as a software platform provider the way that we might think. Scantinel integration is complete. Luminar footprint on track for mid-year. Integration risk the market's been pricing in is largely resolved and ahead of schedule. We don't want different perception systems varying by product. So what that means is MicroVision is developing a unified perception platform across all the hardware inputs. That makes it a software platform story, and market doesn't price MicroVision as a software platform. Market prices us like they think we suck. So I would encourage everyone to look at it through that new lens. Okay, I'm going to shrink my little guy here. Do I see an active connection in the picture? I mean, it's obviously, I try not to speculate about things I don't actually know about. But, I assume that all his relationships with Aptiv are still good. It's interesting to note that we also have a board member who is a former active person, Jada Smith. And it was, Matthew Cole was a MicroVision consultant for some time, and now he took over the active safety and user experience group from Glenn. So they don't have necessarily lidar in their portfolio, but they are probably likely to partner with people to add that to their solutions. So I don't really know. I'd say logic suggests that there's at least a warm introduction to that conversation, but I don't know. Okay, so roadmap view target. So I've taken the roadmap view and I zoomed it out just a little bit to go through next year. So I guess what's new and what's different, things I'll call out here. Your MOVIA S samples in customer hands across all 3 end markets. That exists in the first half 2026 commercial motion. Mosaic and Sentinel unified toolkit integration is happening here in the first half. The MOVIA S production launch early Q4, that means October. Halo B samples will be available sometime toward in the second half. The aerial systems product availability and this drone MOUs POs was put out there. So next week there's going to be some form of drone presentation. This could be the drone demonstrator that we've been looking forward to. And after that, we would expect the next logical step would be some form of MOU or purchase order of the MicroVision payload to some of these drone manufacturers. So zooming out a little bit, Halo productization throughout the first half, then Halo launch preparation into 2027. Early 2027, we also get the Scantinel A sample. And this is when the Halo sales motion would begin in earnest. As soon as those B samples are ready, they're starting to sell it. And then the last milestone I've got here is the Scantinel development partner agreements, which we could look forward to sometime after they complete the A sample of the FMCW. I put in here a question, financing. Like, I don't know when they're going to tackle that. It could be first half, could be second half. But obviously we need to fund the business for this roadmap to be executed. So I think that's it. Was there anything that I didn't cover either in this talk track or, in the interview itself that you think would be, instructive for us to talk through? DGP asked about model year, I think 2030 vehicles. When would design agreements need to be signed? Yeah. So going back to the presentation, sorry about this. We're just going to scroll through real quick. He described a 2.5 to 3 year development validation cycle. So the B or C sample is required. So if Halo is the solution and the B samples are available later this year, then I would imagine as soon as those B samples are available, that would be the prerequisite for somebody to, sign a deal with us. I don't know if it happens the next day or what, but sometime after these Halo samples become available to customers, then you've got another 2.5 to 3 years. So what is it? It's 2026. Is March 2026. So if, let's just say it's Q4, October is when the B samples happen. At that point, you'd have 3 years till October 2029 or mid 2029. So if we can hit mid this year for the B samples of Halo, then I'd say we're positioned for this timeline that's shown here. But, it's anybody's guess. It could happen the end of this year, but the B sample availability of Halo would seem to be it. Interestingly, the Nissan robotaxi thing, was another the thing I didn't really press on for reasons that I guess I described earlier. But they have a timeline around 2027 fiscal year, which of course goes through March 2028. So I don't know how many units they would require to fulfill the demand that they expect, but that's another dimension to it. They've been working with Iris in all their development work. So does this Nissan program still have this or what? Like, I don't know. So something worthy of further investigation. All right, cool. Anything else that's on folks' minds that we want to be sure we cover out on before we wrap up the interview and the post-interview analysis? If I put an acronym out that you don't know, definitely go ahead and reach out, and I'm happy to explain it. I definitely don't want the show to be like too dense or technical or acronym heavy. So let me know about that one. I appreciate you, GGP. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. It's like awesome fun to have this audience, which is you, and you guys make this great. So I appreciate each one of you, and I'm here trying to do my level best every week, so you get the best MicroVision related information I can. So thank you once again, and I'll be in touch. I have some pretty cool plans for further things to discuss, and I look forward to going through it with all of you. So thank you so much, and